nobody is going to stick up for people looting an area, for burning down buildings, attacking the police. These aren't protesters, they are rioters and they're looters, and they need to be dealt with. It was always going to be a flashpoint around asylum accommodation because people are going to conflate many issues that they're angry with, and this just gives them a focal point to pour their anger onto.
Mm.
Um, it's a very difficult situation as to what you're going to do because yes, you need to be able to process and move these people on, but at the moment they are accommodated in hotels, whether we like it or not. So we need to get to the point of dealing with the anger in communities, but also maintaining law and order on our streets.
Now, the use of hotels to house asylum seekers, as you well know, has become a flashpoint in the disorder that has been spreading over the last 6 days. Well, Labour's preparing to end the use of things like large military sites and hotels to house asylum seekers. Instead, they want to move migrants around the country to cut pressure on local areas. The government struck agreements with councils on the number of people who'll be settled in their area. And that could be then in empty homes, in former student blocks and care homes, places that have got things like self-catering facilities. Yvette Cooper has already closed down the Bibby Stockholm barge in Dorset. So what do we make of the new plans? Claire Pearsall is a former Home Office advisor who joins us now. Claire, good morning.
Morning.
It's a real gear change from the plans that the Conservatives had in place. What do you make of them?
We've had a scheme like this previously. Dispersal accommodation was used back in sort of 2017, 2018. Admittedly, we didn't have the large figures that are currently sitting waiting for asylum processing. But it is not an unusual concept. I think the real problem is finding those empty homes that the Home Secretary thinks she can use. And that's always going to be a problem. Yes, there are empty homes across the United Kingdom. I think the latest figures were about 261,000, but some of those will be in a state of disrepair. They're going to be very expensive to
Mm.
bring back in. And it's only going to heighten the argument that migrants are getting first dibs at houses in local areas above residents who are on council waiting lists. So I think she's storing up an awful lot of problems. And where is the cost going to fall? It's going to be those local authorities that will have to pick up the tab.
Is it better though than hotels? I mean, I think that the government spent £3.1 billion on hotel accommodation for asylum seekers. It's about £8 million a day.
But then again, the cost of accommodation is going to be expensive. It depends where you put people. If
Mm.
you're looking for rented accommodation, rents in this country, as most people will know, have gone up substantially. So there is always going to be that cost. Houses of multiple occupation, which is another option that the Home Secretary is looking at, could be an answer. But normally they're occupied by students, and you only have to speak to MPs in student towns to know that they come with a whole bunch of issues as well. They're not always standard accommodation. They are left
Yeah.
to be less than you and I would accept. So I think that it's not necessarily going to be a cheaper option in the long run. All I can see is the government is going to offload this onto local authorities who are already stretched to maximum capacity. Does beg the question, is this in time for council tax rises?
Yeah, there's another story in the paper about the number of us who aren't paying our council tax. In the long run, Claire, Labour's plan is pretty simple, they say, to process the claims. Now, the Tories, they introduced legislation that said everyone who's crossed the channel illegally, that you're illegal migrants, you're banned from ever settling in the UK. Keir Starmer's government are sort of undoing that. They want to begin processing it's 100,000 small boat arrivals. If they can get that process in place quickly, does this start to solve the problem?
Well, yeah, I think it does. You've got an awful lot of people sitting in a backlog, around sort of 90,000 people who are left in limbo. If you can start processing them, and if you have returns agreements in place for those people who aren't successful in remaining in the United Kingdom, then absolutely that has to be the best way to go. And I've argued long and hard for those kind of processes to be in place. You need to be able to do it quickly, and you need to be able to return people if they're not successful. If you have both of those things in place, then yes, this is absolutely
Mm.
fantastic. But I would really like to see the devil's in the detail, as they always say. What returns agreements are in place? How many people does the Home Secretary think she can remove if they have no right to remain?
Yeah. The other thing that we've seen, Claire, just over the last few days, a week on from that absolutely atrocious incident is, how much these asylum hotels have become, the hotels holding and housing asylum seekers have become such a flashpoint. I wonder what you make of how the Home Office, how the government have been handling the violence, particularly around those areas like Rotherham.
I think this is incredibly difficult because you're talking about scenes across the United Kingdom which have been horrendous. Nobody is going to stick up for people looting an area, for burning down buildings, attacking the police. These aren't protesters, they are rioters and they're looters, and they need to be dealt with. It was always going to be a flashpoint around asylum accommodation because people are going to conflate many issues that they're angry with, and this just gives them a focal point to pour their anger onto.
Mm,
It's a very difficult situation as to what you're going to do, because yes, you need to be able to process and move these people on, but at the moment they are accommodated in hotels, whether we like it or not. So we need to get to the point of dealing with the anger in communities, but also maintaining law and order on our streets.
yeah, except, well, that's the balance that the government are trying to strike. Claire, thank you. Claire Pearsall, former Home Office advisor, going through the new plans being put forward by the Home Secretary. Plans that are so difficult. I mean, no more Rwanda plan, no more Bibi Stockholm barge, in which case, what instead? And the strategy to move asylum seekers into empty homes across Britain. You can read more about it inside the paper today.